The Dallas Stars got back in the win column after a heartbreaking loss on Monday night. They take down the New Jersey Devils by a score of 4-1. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Sam Nestler of Dallas Hockey Now to talk about last night's big win, and we break down some of the biggest plays and biggest performances from across the Stars lineup. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Bing bong.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on this Wednesday, December 14th. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener of the show, thank you for stopping by and making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you guys for the continued support of this show throughout the season as we continue to bring you that daily Dallas Stars analysis and breakdown of games. And in just a second, I'm joined by Sam Nestler of Dallas Hockey Now to break down last night's big win. So let's go ahead and jump ahead to that conversation with Sam. Joining me now on today's episode, he's been on the show several times before and has a little bit more insight maybe on the New Jersey Devils, being from New Jersey himself, a beat writer for the Dallas Stars. Sam Nestler. Sam, how's it going? How are you managing after this chaotic game that we just watched between the Stars and the Devils?
Yeah, doing good. It's always nice when the team you write for beats your hometown team. So that's good to rub in some faces of people at home. But that was a fun one. So I'm glad it was, because sometimes back-to-backs are not exciting, but that was definitely exciting.
Yeah, I mean, big time for the Stars. Obviously, Monday night not ending quite the way that they would have wanted it to. And, you know, the Devils also playing on Monday night and a pretty bitter loss for them in overtime against the Rangers. And so big 2 points on the line for both these teams, and Dallas able to find a way and, you know, get the win on the road in a game that maybe not a lot of people expected them to win outside of maybe people that like and follow the Dallas Stars and the team themselves. And one thing I think they've done an exceptional job of this season, and I know it's something that Coach DeBoer has touched on several times, is they always find a way, it seems, to stop the bleeding and not really let these losses snowball or let, you know, one bad night or one bad sequence kind of take over the team as a whole and kind of put a gray cloud over them. Is that something that you've seen as well? And I mean, what do you think is the reason the Stars are able to shake off the tough losses and shake off the rough moments and then, you know, push forward and find a way to still be successful?
That was the really interesting thing coming into tonight, because the Devils had not lost 3 games straight all season. And obviously you mentioned they lost to the Rangers. They were up 2-0 in the first 5 minutes last night and ended up losing in overtime. So both teams were coming off losses. Yeah, the Devils are coming off 2 losses. So you kind of just feel like, I'm not really sure if you can take down a team that's been able to not, like you said, stop the bleeding. The Devils have done the exact same thing. But Dallas has done a great job all year, not only in terms of game to game, but within games. You know, you see so many times over the past 5-6 years, we've seen they give up that one kind of heartbreaking goal and then it just derails and all of a sudden it's 5-1. This year, you just don't see that. They give up a tying goal late and they win in overtime, or, you know, they give up the goal that gives the other team the lead. And we've seen how many comebacks in the third period. So I believe, honestly, that the buy-in here is just massive. And anytime you talk to any of the players, they just downplay all of it. It's just, yeah, well, we know that happened and now we move on. And that's really shown on the ice with the ability to come back, win games after tough losses, and make good plays after giving up a tough goal or whatever it might be within a game.
Yeah, I mean, in this season, across the NHL has just been riddled with teams that go on these massive losing streaks. I know the Blues went on one. I mean, the Anaheim Ducks are a little bit of a different situation, but I mean, teams all over the league, yes, going for new heights there, or maybe new lows, depending on how you look at it. But the Stars, despite all of that, have found a way, at least up to this point, to not really let these kind of situations snowball. And obviously, like we've said, Monday night, not an ideal ending, a game where you definitely feel like you deserved and could have earned 2 points, definitely deserved at least one. And going into a building that's been a tough building to play in this season against a good team. And the Devils certainly had their looks, but both goalies played a pretty incredible game tonight on both sides of the ice. But from the Stars' perspective, Scott Wedgewood, he's just been so important for this team, especially on the road. That's where most of his starts have been this year. What have you personally liked from Scott Wedgewood's game? And I mean, how important really is he to this team from the way you see things? Because Jake Ottinger, we know what we're going to get, but I feel like, Scott Wedgewood is just such an underrated piece for this team.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Wedgewood that impresses me is that although DeBoer does say he wants to use Wedgewood a lot more than other teams, like you see Igor Shesterkin playing 65 games a year, he doesn't want that for Jake. But so far, Scott has not played a whole lot, especially late. Jake, I believe, started 6 straight and like 9 of the last 10, dating back to when he missed a couple with an injury. So Scott has kind of just had to sit around and practice, and it's kind of like the Joel Hanley effect. When he comes in, he's always good, and I think he just has poise. He brought up, he talked about how he did tons of mental work a couple years ago in his career to just solidify his mental game, remain calm, kind of stay on that flat line, not get too high, not get too low, which is, talked about so much in sports. And he shows that on the ice. I mean, he makes saves, and tonight wasn't as big as, the Carolina game last year or games where he's had to make heroic save after heroic save, but he made 35 saves, I believe. He had a .972 save percentage. So no matter what those shots are coming from, it's going to be that's a good game. And he's just given not only the Stars a boost, but Ottinger a boost, because it helps to have that confident backup, knowing that, okay, I'm going to play this game. I know that we have a great chance to win with Scott playing tomorrow, and then I can get right back in there. And we've seen that. I mean, we saw last year, Ottinger was starting to fade. He was playing 15, 16 straight games with Holtby injured and who knows with Hudobin. And then all of a sudden they bring in Wedgewood around the trade deadline, and Ottinger plays probably the best goalie in the NHL for the remainder of the season. So I think it's huge, not only for the team, but specifically for Ottinger. And they've been a great duo all year long.
They really have. And I think you see a lot of great duos across the league. But even just from what I see, it seems like both of those guys have a good relationship too. And I think they both understand their roles of knowing Jake is the number one guy and he is going to get the majority of starts. But there's that level of respect, I think, between the two, and a level of respect across the locker room, knowing that both guys can go out there. Either one can get the start and the Stars have a chance to win. It doesn't matter where they're playing or who they're playing. I mean, both guys have shown this season that they can get the job done and be really competitive. And I mean, we even saw it with Scott when he had to come in for Jake whenever Jake was sidelined a little bit with injury. And I mean, he came in and won the majority of his starts during that stretch. So absolutely big stuff there, and continuing to be a really nice pickup for the Stars at the deadline, and a nice win for Wedgewood in the building for the team that drafted him over a decade ago. I mean, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for things to come full circle in the league, but I have to imagine it feels good to get the win for him, but maybe a little bit extra just to get a win back where it all began. But continuing on the trend of good players for the Dallas Stars, we all know what Jason Robertson did back in the month of November, but this month in December, things have really started to tilt in favor of Roope Hintz, and he, of course, gets maybe the biggest goal of the night at the very end of the second period. What have you seen from Hintz over the past few weeks, and what have you really liked about his game? Because he's been on fire lately.
Yeah, what's funny is Hintz has just been always steady, and I saw a number on the during the game today. I can't remember the exact number, but he's like plus 46 since the start of 2018-19, maybe something crazy like that. So he's just always steady, and we know a lot about him. We know he's the two-way guy. We know he has the speed. And if you look at his stats, he wasn't quiet during Robertson's streak. He was just overshadowed. And so it's not like he, was just quiet and not playing well and then all of a sudden started scoring. He just wasn't the guy because Robertson was getting so much attention from around the league. But you're right. He has increased his game. I think he had 4 goals and 6 points in 4 games last week. Adds another goal, added the early goal last night. So he's playing very, very well. And that line is just, I've run out of words. Like Razor was talking about it yesterday, how every player knows what they do. Every coach knows what they do. They prepare for them for probably hours and nothing works. They just come out, and especially last night against Pittsburgh, they just, every time they're on the ice, they create a scoring chance. And it's just those little plays, little pass, little cycle, little play, and they create a chance. And tonight they were good again. Not as many scoring chances, but what an incredible goal. Hamilton, I'm not sure why he iced that puck with the time running out. Maybe he was trying to put a little English on it and didn't get enough. But what a massive goal. I think it was Miro rips it off the post and Roope is right there in front. And again, showing you that he can do more than just fly up the ice and score on a breakaway. He can get in front, he can tip pucks, and he can bury rebounds as well. So it's pretty big for them to have him playing at his best right now.
Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting information, news, stats, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and even the World Cup. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, which if you're listening to this one, you probably do, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. You can head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline.net is where the game starts. Yeah, especially after he just signed that big extension, getting Miro Heiskanen level money and a Miro Heiskanen level term. I mean, I think no one that follows the Stars was uncomfortable with having Roope Hintz around long term, but he's affirming, the expectations and the thoughts that everyone had about him of being, arguably the best player on this team. Because like you said, he can play that 200-foot game and can play defense, but also can score those big goals. And I mean, yeah, you nailed it right on the head. I mean, that was just a massive goal for the Stars, getting that momentum into the second intermission and riding that a little bit into the third period, where they eventually get the win with a couple other goals, although they were empty net. And we talked about Scott Wedgewood a second ago, but at least I don't think they've changed it. But as of right now, they still have taken away Scott Wedgewood's assist on Esa Lindell's goal, which is a tragedy, if you ask me. He absolutely deserves to have an assist along with his 35 saves.
I believe Jake has one this year as well, so that would have given both guys an apple on the season, which would have been nice. He deserved it, so
yeah.
We'll see if they add it back. I don't know the rules; it's so complicated with goalie stuff like that. So we'll see what they end up doing by the end of the night. Those things seem to change fairly often throughout the evening.
Right, and I think it already has changed. I think they gave him the assist, took it away, and we'll see. Maybe they'll look at the game as a whole and say he really deserves it, and they'll add it back. And I don't think too many people will complain, and Stars fans will be happy. But moving on and continuing to talk about players that are playing well. I know this guy didn't get any points or goals tonight, but still playing at an incredibly high level over the past week or so, shifting to the defensive side of the ice, and a few lineup changes over the defensive pairings over the past few games. And Nils Lundkvist now playing alongside Miro Heiskanen. He gets the game tying goal against Ottawa last Thursday, the game winning goal in overtime against Detroit on Saturday. What have you seen change in Nils Lundkvist's game from, getting moved from playing not with Miro Heiskanen to playing with Miro? Because obviously there is a boost there. Miro just makes guys around him better. But what have you seen from Nils on an individual level that you really like and that you think has elevated his game to the next level?
Confidence. 100%. He looks like a different player. He takes the risks that he wasn't necessarily taking. And he just makes those quick plays. The biggest thing from Miro that we see and other elite defensemen around the league is they never hesitate. They make the move at full speed, and he's doing that now. Whether it's a pinch last night against Pittsburgh, he made two great pinches to eventually get that deflection over to Hintz for the opening goal on the first shift. And he's been doing that ever, since last week coming back from the scratch. And I spoke to him for a while. I forget which day, but right when he was about to come back from his scratch. And he mentioned how the experience last year in New York helped him a ton because he was in and out of the lineup a ton. I think he only played like 20-something games, didn't have a lot of points. They kind of looked like they were giving up on him. And that's really hard for a player. He was 21 years old. So he's still only 22, but he's learned a ton from that experience. And now he's being shown that let's be completely straight. Pete DeBoer has full confidence in him. He's mentioned it over and over again. He's just said he just needed to reset, but we know this guy is going to be a very good defenseman for a very long time. And I think it was really smart, underrated move to put him with Miro because you just get more confident. Colin Miller talked about it when he was with him. You just don't have to do as much, and you know that you have that security blanket where you make a mistake up the ice and Miro, even if he's behind the net, he's going to find his way back on the back check to make a play. So I think it's been huge, not only Neil's confidence himself, but the confidence that he has Miro there with him. And I believe, honestly, that's why they're sticking with them here for the last few games.
Yeah, it's been special to watch him grow in that confidence. I mean, being only 22 years old, you're bound to, have a few bad nights and make a few mistakes. And so I think the scratch likely warranted, but I think it really has paid off. And I've seen other comments from other interviews of him saying that, he wasn't a fan of it at first, but as time went on, and especially now, he recognizes, how important it was for him to kind of take that step back. And now it seems like he's picked up where he left off. And you talk about, DeBoer speaking into his level of play and speaking into the confidence of his play on the ice. I think that that's just been a huge part for this Stars team this season. It seems like DeBoer is very quick to point out how great his players are playing. I know the last home game against Detroit, he was real quick to say that was Denis Gurianov's best game of the season after he scored a big goal for the team and did play a really solid game overall. Is that something you've noticed as well? Not to say that previous coaches have not affirmed their players or spoken highly of them, but do you think there is a little bit of a change in culture with Pete DeBoer of belief from the coaching staff that extends to the players and then is kind of shared amongst that group?
Yeah, and I think the big thing is that it goes both ways. It doesn't always go both ways. And you see a ton of players coaches that are going to always back their players, and the coaches will usually back their players, but it has to go both ways in order for it to be genuine. And it's genuine. He straight up tells us, this is what's happening. This is, take Gurianov, for example. He had a couple bad games, so we gave him, a little break. He was injured as well. Now, okay, he was good. Now he just needs to be consistently good. Okay, he was good again. That was his best game. So it's just an honest conversation, and that's really underrated with coaches, especially for anyone in the media, because you want to know what's going on. Like we don't want to jump on a player and then find out there's something deeper going on that we don't know about. So I think the mutual respect both ways. They have full buy-in with Pete DeBoer and his entire staff, and his entire staff has full buy-in with them. And I believe that they have the perfect blend of, certain assistant coaches that are energetic and bring the energy to the rink. Pete's a little more, kind of quiet, teaches. And I think it's just worked really well. And I spoke to Jim Nill last week about his expectations. There'll be an article coming out in the next couple of days about that. But he was kind of shocked. And he told me, he was like, I did not expect this to work so quickly. And I don't think any of us did. I mean, when do you see a new coach, new coaching staff, buttload of new players, and coming off of a kind of a rough last few years where there was people that wanted the coach out, there was people that wanted players out, there was not enough scoring, there was all these issues. And then they came in, we know how hot they were in the start. And, when they started falling down to earth a little bit, you got a little worried, like, okay, maybe that was not really. And then all of a sudden they just keep chugging. They're not the team they were in the first 12 games. They haven't scored as much, and they haven't dominated as much, but they're still finding ways to win games and even get points when they don't play well. I mean, if someone was to ask me and I wasn't fully aware of that record on that homestand, I would never say they were 3-1-1, because it didn't feel like that. It felt like they kind of got outplayed. They had to make some comebacks. I would have said, maybe they lost a couple of those or didn't get 7 out of 10 points, but that's what's happening. And it's really, like you said, that respect and confidence between both sides has really just driven them to new heights.
Yeah, it's been really cool to watch, and just a breath of fresh air. I mean, you're right. I think there was a lot of uncertainty coming into this year of, Pete DeBoer had taken teams to the Stanley Cup Finals in the past. He had some good teams, and the Stars had some good personnel, and they were returning a lot of that good personnel, the top line, Miro Heiskanen, Sagan, Ben, guys that had been good in the past, but hadn't really shown too many flashes, extended flashes, I will say, over the past few years. But now we've seen Jamie Benn have a resurgence in his career, guys like Nils Lundqvist, and even other defensemen like Esa Lindell, who did get an empty net goal. But just overall, I think Esa is having one of his better years, quietly just on both ends of the ice, playing really well. And I think a big part of that has been what DeBoer has come in with his coaching staff and what those guys have done. It's truly exceptional, and maybe doesn't get as much attention because, like you said, the Stars aren't dominating like they were at the start of the year, but still finding ways to win games, still finding ways to get points, and still in the race for a top 3 spot in the Central Division. Although I personally did not expect Winnipeg to also be in that race, but this season is full of surprises.
Yeah, you expect Colorado to be in there, maybe not Winnipeg, maybe not even Dallas. So Yeah, it's been surprising. And you mentioned resurgence as well. And I think he's getting everything out of every player is something that you hear. It's kind of a cliche in hockey, but it's so true. You need every player to have that buy-in and get the most out of them, whether that's putting Jamie on the third line was something that, people discussed a little bit this summer because we saw Pat Maroon eventually hit that point where he went down and he played a huge role in, 3 straight trips to the final, or 3 straight championships, 4 straight trips to the final. So those type of players, and Jamie's responded to it. He's doing all the stuff we know he does really well. And then he's also adding points, at least he did in November on a rapid pace. But also Tyler Seguin was a huge talking point coming into this year. And he doesn't have a ton of points, especially as of late. But if you look at his games, he is on a different level than the Tyler Seguin we have seen. He's racking up. I think he had like 6 shots in 2 straight games. He had 4 shots in another game. He got the goal and admitted that was his worst game, and he ended up getting the overtime winner. So he's really played well. And I really, I don't want to say he's definitely going to, because you don't want to, get ahead of yourself, but he seems like he's right there about to explode. And I think for Stars fans, for anyone around the team, even if you're not a fan of the team and you just for Tyler Seguin, his mental health is everything from all he's been through. You hope it happens, because he was good in the beginning of the year and he's already on a better pace than he was the last couple seasons. But he really just feels like he's ready to break out. And I think that would be massive for this team.
Definitely. There's no doubt. And this is something you and I have talked about even early in the season, especially just in terms of Stars fans. Like, regardless of how Seguin has played, like, that crowd at the American Airlines Center loves Tyler Seguin. And so if he is able to continue to elevate his game, I mean, he got an assist at the end of this game. I mean, slowly racking up points. And even when he doesn't get points, he plays really well. I think that game against Toronto, where the Stars got shut out, one of his better games of the season. He got a ton of good looks, and I think him playing alongside Mason Marchment has been a good pairing. It's just been, a matter of finding that third line mate, and maybe Ty Dellandrea can stay there long term. He showed up big in New Jersey on Tuesday night, so really good stuff from Seguin and Ben. I know a lot of the pressure has been taken off them early in the season. I know there was a lot of criticism from the hockey world on those guys coming in, and it seems like they've been able to silence the critics and play at a high level, and the Stars are winning hockey games, and they're a better team for it. And one other player I want to touch on while we're talking about expectations and the team playing well as a whole. I know that Ryan Suter kind of had a roller coaster of a night in New Jersey, and I know there's always going to be the people that defend Suter and the people that don't like his play. And I know where a lot of people fall on the issue just from social media, and I know who to expect good from and who to expect bad from. But what are your overall thoughts on Suter's play? Because I know I have my thoughts, and I tend to lean more to the side of defense just because he's definitely not the best defenseman on the team, but I do think he provides some value. And I'm just curious your thoughts on Ryan Suter and how he fits into the system with this Stars team.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see how many minutes he played, because he's on that second pairing. So we played 21-41. So he played a lot tonight as well. So with Suter, you have to think about the fact that you're not getting Ryan Suter from his glory days in Minnesota or even Nashville. You're getting, a veteran guy who brings tons of leadership. He's an honest, very, very open guy. But on the ice, I think why he's so criticized by fans is because of his foot speed. And you see it a couple times. I mean, he got beat by Jesper Bratt a couple times down the wing tonight. I think everybody gets beat by Bratt. He's a very speedy guy. But I think that's the biggest thing, because when he does make a mistake or just doesn't make a play, it's very obvious because he kind of looks like he's stationary. But if you watch his play overall, he's blocking shots. He's making smart decisions with the puck. He doesn't overdo things. And I think that's been big for them, being able to have that solidified guy on the blue line. And I think the biggest positive of Nils Lundkvist coming back is getting Ryan Suter not having to be the power play guy. He's an option and he can be really good at it, but not having to be that number one, not the number 2 power play, but the guy who runs it, because he's just not that skilled and dynamic as he was. And so having Nils do that, I think should hopefully silence some of these critics. But you got to think, you got him on a budget deal. You have him for 2 more seasons. And I think that you just have to look at what he brings rather than looking at what they want him to be. And the same thing goes. I mean, Hakanpah's not a speedy skater. Lindell's not even a speedy skater. And those guys are also, and we saw Hakanpah get beat to the net last night by Rust on the game-winning goal at the end. So it just feels like it's overdone. But with anything with hockey, you get one guy who starts to get hated on, and it just blasts off. We saw it with Rick Bowness last year. We're seeing it with Suter this year. So I really think he brings a lot. I will not be surprised if his time on ice starts to slowly decrease. I'm honestly a little surprised that Lindell and Hakanpah don't play more than he does with Miller. But I think that you just have to know what he brings. And if you look at his, you overall look at his stats, he doesn't have any goals, but you look at what he brings each night, and he's usually like a +1, or usually has a few shots, or usually has 3 blocks, or whatever it might be. And he kills penalties. He just does a lot of good where you can take the foot speed or once in a while errors and just kind of let them fade, because he's not the only one making mistakes. And I think that's what is kind of overlooked sometimes.
I think that's really well said. And I agree with, everything that you just laid out. And it's just baffling to me. And I know you said it, there's always going to be someone that has to play the scapegoat role. And last year it was Rick Bowness, and now this year it appears to be Suter. But I don't know. It just doesn't always sit right with me that the Stars are at the top of their division. They just beat the New Jersey Devils 4-1, although that is maybe a little bit of a misleading score. And there's just people up, and Ryan Suter blocked a shot. I mean, that was a big play in a situation that, like I made a, Ryan Suter for Vezina joke, and I know other people did the same thing. And there's people that are taking it very seriously and, calling me and other people making the joke delusional and saying he's a bad player. And I'm like, the Stars just beat one of the best teams in the league and are at the top of their division. Like, you are allowed to be happy that your team is doing well. Not everything has to, have something negative to talk about. But I don't know. Maybe some people just like to be upset, and I don't know. It's an enigma, if you will. That the Stars and some fans choose to find the negative amongst the positives. But I'm sure in the Stars locker room, there's a lot of belief around him, and I know that there certainly is. And even just in the brief interactions I've had with Ryan Suter, I've liked what he has to say and what he does for this team. And I think he also just provides that veteran presence on the defensive core, because as good as guys like Lundqvist and Heiskanen are, they're both still really young and still have a lot of their career left ahead of them. And I think especially come playoff time, you can't overvalue having that veteran presence in a locker room, a guy who's been in those 7-game playoff series, the ones that are super intense. And I just don't think you can put a price tag on that. Now, on both sides of the ice with forwards and defensemen. You have Ben and Sagan and Pavelski, but then on the defensive side, I think Suter just kind of plays that role really well.
Yeah, those are the guys that score those big goals. Like, you look in any Stanley Cup final, you're going to find a guy who scores 1 or 2 huge goals, and he's usually a veteran. It's because he's calm under pressure and is able to settle in when maybe some of the younger guys are running around frantically. And you're absolutely right. That's a huge value, and they have a bunch of it this year. And I think one thing maybe that kind of gets people agitated is that the Stars defense overall still has work to do. And we know that. There was a ton of talk about their work in front of the net. I kind of broke down video on it, and there was a ton of errors. There was just mental lapses, not tying up sticks or whatever. And we saw it tonight where Suter, on Miles Wood's goal, Suter was right there and, looked like he could have gone and tied up his stick. Instead, he was just pushing on the guy's back, let Wood get his stick on that deflection. But like I said, there's a lot of guys doing that. There's a lot of things where it breaks down. Last night, there were 3 or 4 guys on that Malkin goal that led to it eventually being a goal. So like exactly what you said, he brings veteran leadership. He brings a lot on the ice. And I think that you just need to overlook the fact that he's not the fastest skater. And that's what leads to some mistakes once in a while. But everyone can't be Niels Lundqvist and Miro Heiskanen. No team has 6 of those. So you make the smart plays, and he's a veteran guy, which allows him to overcome his foot speed a lot. Joe Pavelski does the exact same thing on the other end of the ice. So yeah, you just got to look at it on the positive way. But for any of the critics, give him a chance. That's all I say.
I second that. We're always about giving second chances out, and I mean whether it's him, I know Denis Gurianov has caught in some flack this season, and I've been a Gurianov supporter since he signed, even before he signed his deal this summer, but especially this year. I always try to err on the side of wanting to see players succeed rather than wanting to see them fail. And everyone on this Stars roster, in my eyes, is an incredibly likable player, whether you're a Stars fan or not. And so it's hard to not to want to see them succeed. Although now that I think about it, I can see why some fans of other teams might not want to see a Jamie Benn or Mason Marchment succeed, but that's not my problem because they play for the team that I cover. Well, Sam, this has been great. Obviously, a lot of fun to talk about the Stars getting a win on the road. Still a lot of work left to be done on this road trip. But before we head out, I want to give you a second to let the people know where they can find you on social media, where they can find your work and all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. You can see at Sam Nestler on Twitter, and you can follow my work at Dallas Hockey Now. Read my stuff as well. We have Bruce Levine, I don't know what he prefers, working as the columnist, and he does some really awesome stuff, more long form writing. So he brings his radio voice to his writing, and it's fantastic. So check out stuff. Reach out to me on Twitter anytime.
Absolutely. And I believe Bruce did a piece on Ryan Suter maybe before the season started, saying a lot of the same stuff that we both just talked about. So I know we're not the only two out there, just to give that a quick plug. But Sam, thanks for hopping on, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Thanks, Dane. Appreciate it.
Huge thank you to Sam Nestler for coming on today's episode and talking about last night's win. Great win for the Stars and huge 2 points acquired by them. And now they just got to find a way to string together a few more on this road trip. But they definitely are back on track after a bitter defeat on Monday night. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, the follow button on your favorite podcasting platform, and follow us on social media as well. Locked On Stars on both Instagram and Twitter, as well as my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we'll be getting you prepared for the Dallas Stars' next game. They'll be traveling to the nation's capital, at least the American nation's capital, to take on the Washington Capitals, who are playing incredibly well. And I don't want to jinx it, but at the time of recording this, they are in the third period of their game against the Chicago Blackhawks and up 4-2, and Alexander Ovechkin on the doorstep of 800 goals. Maybe he has 800, maybe he doesn't. By the time you're hearing this, you will know for sure. But I believe also if this win against Chicago holds, that's 5 in a row. So they're playing pretty well right now, despite sliding a little bit and having a few injuries to deal with this season. So should be an interesting matchup, to say the least. The Dallas Stars taking on Alexander Ovechkin and the Capitals, and we'll be previewing that game on tomorrow's episode. But thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy your Wednesday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.